Have you ever wondered how to sell to different types of personalities? Way before I even got involved in anything online, one of the things I learned was personality selling, disc personality selling, specifically extended disc personality selling. And there's 4 major types of personalities. And so today I'm going to walk you through what we call the S personality and how to sell to them, because this one, it came up this week, and I think it's going to be something that is really awesome. And with that said, Sales Ascender, what happened? Sean here again. Let's dive into this. How do you sell to an S personality? Let's give you a little frame of reference, a little context. Okay, so what is DISC? How does it work? Well, there's 4 major personalities, right? There's this really, really fascinating guy named Carl Jung way back in the 50s, and he came out with these 4 different personality types, and he based it on a couple of attributes. What the attributes were: are you active or are you passive? Are you task-oriented or are you relationship-oriented? And if you put those on a graph, you come up with 4 quadrants. Inside of those quadrants, you're going to have each of the different personalities. A D dominant personality is somebody who's extremely active and extremely task-driven. They love results. Think CEO. The I, the influencer in DISC, stands for person who is extremely active but extremely relationship-driven. Okay, so that's going to be the who's who. That's typically your sales professional. So if you're hiring a sales pro, one of the things you maybe want to make sure of is that you have, if you ever do a personality test, which we highly encourage, we teach that in our high-ticket agency stuff, but it's important to have an I personality inside of your sales team, your sales pros, simply because they're people's people, right? They're active in relationship, and so they create and build relationship, which is a great power, superpower of theirs. The next one is S, which I'm going to dive into in a deep dive here with you right now. S stands for steady relator. These are the people that are a little bit more passive, yet they're super relationship driven. Now, the people that come to mind for me are going to be the administrative assistants, the dental assistants, the administratives, the EAs, the VAs. Most of the time, the S personality is the thing that they have is a dominant personality trait. And then, of course, you have the C, which stands for conscientious thinker or critical thinker. This is the person that's going to be a little bit more passive in their actions. However, they're very task driven. They love checklist, think engineer, right? And so when you have these 4 personalities and you understand how each of them interacts and they work, well, there's a couple of things that we can do. So I'm going to dive in and show you exactly how to sell to the S type, because the S type is the one that's pretty elusive. When people run into this personality, they don't understand them most often. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to just move forward to this slide here, and I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. So when we're selling to an S style of personality, there's one word that you have to remember, and the word is TEMP. Okay, this is the secret. This is totally going to help you 100%. And I'm going to walk through everything that you need to know today so you have that, right? First of all, what are the strengths of a steady relator? Now, remember, these are the people that are very, very passive and they're very relationship driven. So their actions show that they're somewhat reserved, but they're very people driven. So what are their strengths? Well, they're very steady. They're very sincere. They're always caring about everybody. They're extremely patient. They're very empathetic, right? They like the words feel. If you ever did like kinesthetic training or anything about touch feel, S's love that type of empathy, right? They're very logically thinking style of people. Just because they don't speak up and they're a little bit more passive in their actions doesn't mean they have a lot to say and a lot to share of value. And the biggest thing about them is they're extremely service oriented, meaning they will go out of their way to make other people happy. So if you're one of these people where you're like, man, I just love making other people happy, I love making a difference in their life, and you don't care so much about the results or the money, but you love the feeling or the empathy, that means you're probably a steady relator. Steady relators typically will speak with a slower cadence, the slower, calm. This is the type of speech patterns that they have, a little bit softer in volume, very steady, just easygoing, right? And some of the weaknesses that a steady relator actually exhibits, a couple of them. Number one, they're a little bit too passive. Sometimes they don't take action. These people need to have all of the data, but more so than that, they need to make sure that in making a decision, if you're selling to one of them, they have to make sure in their mind, their process, their buying process is that everybody in the conversation is taken care of. If they're not all taken care of, there's a big problem, right? So they're going to say no, and they're not going to move forward. So they might be a little bit too passive as a bit of a weakness. Secondly, they resist change. They like things that are constant. They don't like change very much. And unfortunately, as we all know, change is the only true thing that's real in this world. Like everything changes all the time. Like that's the only constant in the universe. So it's a hard thing for S's to understand that things consistently change. The way to do this and speak with them is very simply just asking them questions about how do you feel? Is everyone taken care of? These are the types of questions that are great for them. They're also poor with priorities. No offense to them, but they just actually truly care about making sure everyone else is taken care of, and they put themselves at the bottom of the barrel. But it's good and bad, I guess, but strengths and weaknesses, right? And then lastly is they are very hesitant and sometimes inflexible to making moves. So these are some of the barriers that you're going to run up against if you're trying to sell to an S-style personality. If you're selling to stay-at-home moms, for example, this is going to be a pretty high bucket of people that have this personality, right? So now what happens is when you put too much pressure or too much stress on an S personality, what happens to them? Before I get into showing you how to sell to them, I just want to lay some context and some foundation for you. So they turn into non-emotion. They just turn the emotion button off. You will never see it, although inside it's a ferocious storm. So just be careful. If somebody goes non-emotion on you and they are this personality, inside of them is going crazy. It's like a volcano that's exploding. So just be careful about that, right? They're apathetic, or they lose interest, right? If you have a conversation with one of these people, my wife actually has a lot of S personality in her persona. And sometimes what happens is we'll be having a conversation and she'll realize that she just is like, I'm out of this. I don't want to be in this conversation anymore. She just loses the interest and then like kind of just drifts off. So if you ever had that happen to you, like that's what happens because of the personality. It's not anything against them. It's just they didn't know that. So when we're selling these people, how do we sell to these people, right? So we have to remember this word temp, and here's the definition. This is an easy thing. Take a screenshot of this so that you actually have this thing. When we get into it, just remember you got to check their temp. So whenever you're selling to an S personality, so if you go into a sales conversation and it's somebody who is, an administrative assistant or a stay-at-home mom or somebody that would probably typically fit that personality, remember the first thing is team. You got to involve everybody in the conversation. You got to make sure that the person you're selling to knows that everyone around them in their influence of decisions is actually involved. And it's very important for you to ask the questions about other people in the program. So team, think about the team. You got to ask about the team. Secondly, ethics. You better have integrity. You better have good work ethic, and you better say what you do and do what you say when you're selling to an S personality, because it takes this much of them to say, oh, I'm done, I'm losing interest, non-emotion, I'm out, right? That's what happens. So if you're not ethical, if you're not on time, at least let them know, like, hey, I'm not gonna make it to the meeting. And if you tell them that, they'll be like, okay, that's cool, when are you gonna make it? Because remember, they care about everybody. They care about you as a sales professional. So it's important to have a high ethics standard, especially when it comes to like showing up, doing what you say, saying what you do. Next, you wanna match. What does this mean? Well, when you're selling to an S, it's so vital that we remove as much change in their world as possible. Meaning, we have to understand that their problem matches our solution, that our solution matches their problem. And when you can give them the questioning strategy where they can recognize and realize like, oh my God, yes, I'm having this problem. And I see how this just fits in and flows, and it's just gonna move really, really fast. When you can match your product or service to their pain and problem, and you discuss that with them, like, you see how this would work in your world? You think everybody would play ball with this? These are the types of questions you want to be asking an S personality, because they're going to be like, yes, I can see, let them talk, right? Sometimes when we're selling to an S personality, one of the biggest things that happens in sales conversations is the sales pro will run over the prospect, meaning they'll just keep talking. And especially it's hard when you're selling to an S personality because they need a little bit of process time. So when you ask a question, be okay giving a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds of silence so that they can they can think through like, hey, does this work? And when you're asking something like, do you see how this solution matches the problem that you're having right now and how it would work in your world? And then you be quiet, you wait for them to come back and they'll say something like, yes, I see how that would work. Okay, cool. The next question should be, how is everyone else going to receive this? Because now we're selling to the whole team, right? That's always team, always ethics, always match. And then the last one is patience, right? Patience, be loyal, be dependable, be patient. Don't be hard to ruffle. Don't lose your cool. And most of all with S's, when you're selling to them, just be a good listener. S people love to be heard. And when they can be heard, and then you can turn around and say, well, I heard what you had to say. I feel like this is the problem you actually have. Do you see how this solution could solve that? And then let them talk. They'll say, yes, oh my God, that's perfect. And say, great, before we move on, I just want to make sure that the whole team's taken care of. How do we do that? And those couple of questions when you're selling to an S personality especially will absolutely 100% hit a home run for you. And you'll know exactly now how to handle every time you come in contact with an S. By the way, guys, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this, please drop a comment below. Let me know. Hit me up because I'd be happy to continue deep diving into this. In fact, I used to teach people to close $1 million deals with this formula, my personality selling formula that I created. I'd be happy to share a little bit more in your world. One of the other videos I did on our YouTube channel was about how to sell to dominant personalities. I'm going to keep going through this. But if you're not sure where you are and how to recognize yourself, or maybe what is DISC, or you're just trying to get a little more information, just drop a comment below. I'd be happy to share a little bit more information and to see if it's something that you could use in your world. And again, it is a passion for me and I just want this information out there. So if you're listening to this and it provided value to you, please make sure and smash that like button, smash that love button, share this to somebody that could use it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on all the notifications. And with that said, guys, you've just been tuned up. You should understand exactly how to sell to the S-style personality. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to share this information with you. And with all that said, you've just been tuned up. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.